Announcement. Practice period, where applications are now available and open. I want to make sure to say, you don't have to be or join the practice period to come to Sangha. I mean, everybody's always welcome, always. And having said that, it's a wonderful thing to do. So please consider it, and please consider it in a way. Practice period isn't meant to make your life harder or add more stuff onto it. It's a period of deepening and of bringing our focus to practice. So when you look at the application, which I hope you do, and consider it with deep intent, please consider what you can do and what you want to do from the deepest place. It's like, what would help you? I guess I want to say, this isn't such an, thanks. This isn't such an easy time in the world. We all know we're headed into the elections, and not that things will change, but it will still be practice in the midst of it. Grounding in practice. Articulating our intention to ourselves and sharing it, and being in Sangha helps not only us, but it helps the whole world. I really feel that. In fact, the facetious part of me wants to say the fact that, everybody chose their own thing to do on Tuesday, which is exactly right. And some people listened to the debates, and some people came here, but I'm absolutely sure that the debates, at least from my point of view, went well because we were all sitting here. No. So, but whatever you were doing, it's perfect. So practice isn't some ephemeral idea. It actually is, well, that's where we're headed, is into, it's alive. So please, if you can get the practice, if you can, don't put off filling out your application. It really helps us if you can send them in a timely way. Okay. So having said that, we are currently using as our root and our source a book by Susan Murphy, A Fire Runs Through All Things, Zen Koans for Facing the Climate Crisis, Teachings on Earth, Mind, and Not Knowing. And I've been saying, and I'll keep saying, that we're facing a climate crisis, but we're in a crisis in the sense of tipping points, choice points in our world that are more stark. So her premise is a fire runs through all things. And the root of it is, let me read you the core koan here, because it is based on koans. Medicine and sickness heal each other. The whole earth is medicine. Then what is this self? What is this self? It's a koan, Yunmen. And then she also adds a second koan, which I think many of you know is one of my most favorite and alive koans. A monk asked Zhao Zhou, what is meditation? What is Zazen? It's not meditation, the master replied, or sometimes it's no Zazen. Then what is it? Asked the monk. It's alive, said Zhao Zhou. It's alive. So her basic premise is that a fire runs through everything, that everything is alive. And she translates that as emptiness. Everything is empty. Everything is impermanent. Nothing has any inherent self-existence. And I'm kind of liking that that emptiness is a fire runs through all things. It's alive. everything is profoundly and radically alive in a way that we can't even begin to really imagine or hold, but we can sense it, we can feel it. So the chapter that I'm going to focus on mostly today, chapter 4, is Living in a House on Fire. And it starts with a quote by Gary Schneider. To be truly free, one must take on the basic conditions as they are. Painful, impermanent, open, imperfect. Be grateful for impermanence and for the freedom it grants us. I guess I'm going to read just a little bit from her introduction to this chapter. Why and how do we manage to turn our backs on the fullness of the offer of this reality, this consciousness, this aliveness, this profound, radical aliveness, awakeness, awareness? The Buddha diagnosed our self-treated tendency towards feelings of lack and unease as a sickness. No human being has trouble recognizing. And he prescribed its medicine, the Four Noble Truths, which sketch out the path of awakening. There is suffering, there's a cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is that we put the self at the center of everything. I mean, it's said many different ways, but it's self-centeredness, greed, hate, and delusion that rolls out of that. That there is awakening. We can awaken in the midst of this, and there is a path for that. It's so simple. I just more and more love how simple and direct the Buddha's teachings are, and we'll get back to this. What is the full dimension of this recognizable human unease, even disease? And how are we to muster an appropriately fierce love? It's a great word, fierce love, for a planet fast facing her ecological integrity, losing her ecological integrity in rising heat as she falls into unavoidable ruin. To the point where we are living in a house on fire, not just in the Buddhist sense of impermanence of the body, world, and self, but tragically in a way we are making absurdly literal. We all know there's lots of fires happening around the country and the world right now. It's literal, and we live in a fire zone. It's literal. This is a great topic to be turning towards right now. A sufficient evenness of mind and clarity of response in the midst of climate crisis, in the midst of any crisis, has to be found here in the passionate nature of the human being. So goes a little bit into the chapter before she brings forward the Lotus Sutra, and I'm going to do that because I want to go back and talk about the Fire Sutra. The Fire Sermon is that the Buddha's third discourse that he delivered after his awakening is called the Fire Sermon. This is quite, I really love this stuff. But we all know because, well, those of us who were in the practice period, was it last time? We studied the Lotus Sutra and the parable of the burning house, right? Do you remember it? Is that the house is burning, and the father's saying to the kids, you have to, do you understand? And they're all just completely distracted with their playthings or with the things that, well, they're all distracted with their playthings and we could all imagine in this world how we're all distracted and what our it's like, just leave me alone. And so then he promises them that there's something really wonderful. I mean, he sort of uses greed in a certain kind of way. He says there's something wonderful. If you go outside, each one of you is going to get what you really want. And then when they go outside, they find, and this is all metaphorical, is that it's in the language of the Lotus Sutra, it's one white ox cart, which we could call the one vehicle of love. Like they do get what they really want, but it's not what you thought it was that you really wanted. But that's kind of the path, is in a certain way. We all come in and we think, oh, this will make me more happy, this will make me more at ease, or whatever we come in the door. And that's all really good and wonderful, not to be negated, but along the way, we find out that yes, it's that, and that is the root that taps all the way through. That is an awakening to the true nature of everything and our deepest heart's desire. She says, I just want to read you something she says here. Hearing the Buddha's parable of the house on fire as described in the Lotus Sutra can jumpstart the heart into action in these precarious times. In this case, the house is a metaphor not only for your body. The body is a house on fire. It's impermanence, sickness, aging, death. But also for all the things of this world and all that you love and hold dear. Impermanence is ablaze with emptiness and pervades the whole universe, unconditioned, unqualified, undivided, unsorted, and existing right here in this very moment of your being. Crisis reveals the creative energies at play in times of dynamic change. That graphing fire is creativity. But fire in terms of the elements is spirituality and creativity. It crackles with aliveness. And it softens the categorical beliefs that keep us painfully hardened and resistant, as time maintains its sacred right to meddle in all of our affairs of love. It's like the world's not going to leave us alone. It's everything I want at the deepest root, everything I fear at the deepest root is, I mean, seems to me, it's about love, and it's about connection and interconnection. It's just that we just keep grabbing at the small things. But that's it. The whole world is medicine. We've got everything we need, and we're just going to help each other keep paying attention and unfolding. And I'll also remind us, before going back to the fire sermon, because we also studied this year the Vimalakirti Sutra, which is exactly in this vein. The deeply realized old layperson, Vimalakirti, is lying sick in his bare 10 by 10 foot room. Remember this? Interestingly, though he was known to be wealthy, his dwelling place is very spare. Vimalakirti's name means, I don't remember that we studied this, or if we did, I forgot it, untainted fire. It all begins to weave together, doesn't it? There it is, the fire that runs through all things, untainted by form and emptiness, by yes and no, by right and wrong, by inside and outside. He is the fully human, undivided mind, and he's living it. And remember, his response is he's sick. They say, why are you sick? You're such a wise guy. You know, it's like, what's the matter with you? And he says, I am sick because the whole world is sick. This is not my problem. Clearly, this sickness is the burning house itself, the unresolved unsatisfactoriness of helpless desire and denial within impermanence, an important suffering riddled with lack and loss. However, the humility of Vimalakirti's refusal to elevate himself above the suffering world is the beautiful and plain self-relinquishment that brings care back into the world. And I will add and continue to add forever, that's the Bodhisattva path. Bodhisattvas are not interested in getting out of here. Bodhisattvas, the vow is to be right here in the midst of the fire, which means how do we sit down in the crackling of this aliveness that can feel not always so comfortable. It's big energy alive. But we more and more find the ground to be here so that we really can be of help and service to everybody. Okay, so now I'm gonna come back to the fire sermon. Because you have to listen to me, because there's a fire lotus that one could have imagined, anybody. I just wanted to tell you this is if the staff that I was carrying at the Jukai, and I'll bring for the practice period too. Mary Koopman made it for me, and she beaded, the beading on it is the fire lotus. So it's a really beautiful image. Okay. So the Buddha's fire sermon, the third thing he had to say, and he probably thought a lot about what was important to say here. He characterized our experience of alive in daily life as burning with greed, hate, and delusion. Wanting, clinging, hate, aversion, delusion, ignorance. It's burning with me consciousness. And the experience then, I mean, this is very body. It's really broken down in Theravada and early Buddhist, and is that the me consciousness comes in, so to speak, through the senses. It comes in through the body, like eyes, ears, nose, smell, and then we in Buddhism there's a sixth, which is consciousness. And the experience of it is that mind, which we identify as me, small mind in here, is meeting objects of the senses and mind out there, right? Isn't that the way we process it? But I mean, in the world of dualism, that's what we think is going on. And then what arises, and it's laid out very clearly, is in this experience of contact, then there's a feeling. And really quickly, what arises from a very core, it's so visceral. I mean, study this. I've really found it's very helpful, because what arises is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So wanting, not wanting, burning, passions is instead of saying that was a really bad experience, or whatever my story is about whatever happened, it's really helpful just to say, unpleasant. Because then that's where all the stories arise out of and start rolling. And in the same way, pleasant. It's like, oh, all day pleasant. But then you start to notice how much you want more of it, or how much you're comparing it to something else. And then you start thinking, well, yesterday or tomorrow, or, I mean, please experience what you're experiencing. It's alive. But notice how we get caught up in fear and dread and stories, and how much the stories are just the same old stories wrapped in the different package. But it's just fire. That's all. It's just alive. So practice is to feel the burning in our life with all its difficulty, uncertainty, and stress. And we have a choice to not add fuel to the fire, to not make the burning personal, and to not be identified with the burning. Such a really, really profound and ongoing practice is pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, and then watch how you make it personal, because that's what all the stories do. It comes back to me at the center of it. I mean, again, study the stories, don't miss the feeling tone, but just be aware of it with a lot of humility and kindness and grace and forgiveness. Bodhisattvas practice not getting caught in and identifying with stories so we can be of help. I would say that's one of my key vows is I from the time I was little, it took different forms, but it was always, I always knew. I think we always know. Children always know when there's pain and suffering. It's like, how can I be of help? And then once you carry that as a kind of then it turned into a vow, and then it turned into practice, because it's just so clear that all of my conditioned ways of trying to be of help are really lovely, but they're also not going to alleviate suffering. In some ways, they're just gonna add to it, because I'm doing it out of my own fear and dread and uncomfortableness. So, Dogen, come to Dogen. So every time we pull out Dogen, it validates the whole thing. No, sorry. Buddhas in the past, present, and future abide in flames and turn the great Dharma wheel. Flames are the great practice place of all the Buddhas turning the Dharma wheel, right here in this world. He also lived in a time of political uncertainty and violent weather and cultural change. Dogen did not live in some placid little monastic, let's get out of here world. In Kuge, I think I'm saying it right, Flowers of Emptiness. It's a commentary on the Lotus Sutra. The time and place that the blue lotus flowers open and spread are in the midst of fire and in the time of fire. If metaphors and images, which touch me really deeply, it's where they bloom, is in the midst of fire. So the blue lotus flower depends on the fire to bloom powerfully, dynamically. And it's only under these circumstances that our own Buddha nature blossoms. You can't just go off on a mountain all by yourself and say, I'm going to turn into a Buddha. I mean, you can, and people do, and it's appropriate to take periods of time like that. But it's coming down into the world and being on the world. And even when you're on a mountaintop, the whole world is there with you. So each moment we just keep renewing our bodhisattva vow. And then Dogen wrote further in Kuge, all sparks and flames exist at the place and at the time that the blue lotus flowers open and spread. Beyond the time and place of blue lotus flowers, not a single spark is born, and not a single spark has vivid life. So we start with the smallest sparks. You may have noticed that in a lot of the thangkas, although not in this one of Tara, the figures are dancing in flames. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah, that's what we're doing. Is we're waking up in the sparks and the flames, and it's all around. It's alive. It's each cell. But there's a different relationship to it because we're not sparking with reactivity. Dogen says again in the Eihei Kuroku, a lotus in flames implies practice in the midst of worldly desires. A blue lotus blossoming in something rare and precious, like the transmission of true practice. We are the fire is in us. We are the blue lotus is us. It is our practice and our realization. And this is the time and the place, and it is how we awaken right in the midst of this burning house. Which means the whole world is medicine. Everything. Everything. You can't exclude anything. It's all alive, because the minute you take the aliveness out of it, you turned it into an object out there, which then sets up duality, which then sets up me and you. Yeah, I like it, I don't like it, which is the world we live in, which is exactly how we awaken, which is exactly the teachings of earth, mind, and not knowing. Because if we approach each moment as mystery, each moment as don't know, each moment as who are you? Each moment as what is this moment asking of me? Then there's creativity and there's possibility and there's passion that isn't the passion that keeps looping us back into creating more. I don't know about you guys, but I do look at Facebook and memes and the news. I mean, some of the memes are really funny. I have to admit. And some of them are just, I mean, there's just so much stuff going around that just feels inherently really painful to me. And it's a way of people trying to alleviate suffering or to manage it or to feel like there's some kind of control. So that's why I think, and why we were outside walking today in the circle in the sun, wherever you guys were, and I looked around and I thought, can't believe we get to do this. This is so amazing just to be. I mean, one, it's peaceful, it's safe. I mean, safe as, I mean, we have an amazing life. But then just to be together practicing, to show up and say, yes, yes, I will. Here in the midst of the whole world is burning. It's a blue lotus flower that's alive and awakening in each one of our hearts and bodies. And that, I think, to me is sometimes I think, I don't know how we got so lucky. Just not to say it's not hard. Sometimes it's just hard. Okay, so how about the lotus in flames implies practice in the midst of worldly desires, something rare and precious that is like the transmission of true practice. So I'm going to suggest we go into small groups. You can go any place with any of this or whatever is up, but I think what's burning in you? Like a small